they know that we are so disconnected from our bodies here,
Mm,
that because everything is provided to us, we don't have that relationship with the created world. We don't
right,
have that respect for the fish
right.
or that reverence for the trees. We don't know, we haven't seen the rings, smelled the fragrance, of the pine as we split it. And so they, give their pilgrims that gift of letting them experience God's creation and rejoicing in it.
Hello, my name is Melanie. I am the book publicist at Ancient Faith, and I'm here today with Anthony Linderman, who is the author of A Year in the Company of Angels, A Pilgrim on Spruce Island. Anthony, thank you so much for joining me today.
Melanie, it is a pleasure to be here with you. And I'm so grateful for all of the work that you're doing to publicize my book.
Oh,
And
thank
I'm
you.
excited to tell you more about it and
Great.
talk.
Great. Well, thank you. That's so sweet of you to say. I'm so excited for this conversation. I think it's going to be great. So just to start out, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get into writing? What's a little bit about your background? Did you grow up in the church? Things like that.
Yeah, thank God. I have been Orthodox my whole life. I like to say womb to tomb,
Great.
God willing. And yeah, my parents were, remain really faithful people, and they wanted to spread the gospel. And they were OCMC missionaries in Albania from when I was 6 years old
No
to when I
way.
was 18, for
Wow.
sure.
That is amazing. Did they know, or did you know the Hoppies at all?
I love the Hoppies.
That is
And
so
they actually
funny.
came to my wedding recently.
No
So
way.
it was such an honor to have them there, and
Oh
it
my
was a
goodness.
joy.
What a small world. That is amazing. We also love them. So, I mean, what a small world. That is amazing. So, did you grow up in Albania?
I did. I
Oh my
did.
goodness.
So I grew up speaking Albanian, living there. I really considered it my home.
Wow.
And it was definitely part of my formation as a person, as a writer. And yeah, it was there, mom homeschooled us,
Yeah.
through seventh grade, at least for me. And she really instilled in me a huge love of reading and of books. And, once I got to a certain level, I just took off on my own.
Hmm.
And it was really, I was reading a fantasy series in which one of my favorite characters dies.
Hmm.
I was so irritated. It seemed at that point in my reading life that all of my favorite characters were dying. And
Yep.
so, as inglorious as it is, I became a writer to write stories in which no one dies. I was like, this book would be perfect if my favorite character didn't die. It's always like this noble side character, that propels the hero onward,
Right.
to victory. But I was like,
Right.
I love that person.
That's
Uh,
so funny.
yeah,
So, that's how you originally got the idea to become a writer. That's so funny.
it
I
was
love
by necessity to write a book with undying characters.
I love it. So your goal is to write books that aren't disappointing in that way to your readers.
Well, to be that was my childhood goal.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older and have experienced life and you know the cross and the resurrection a little bit more, I'm a
Yeah.
little bit more at peace with characters dying,
Sure.
um, and more at peace with even people I love passing away,
Yeah. Yeah.
because of our hope in the resurrection.
Right. Right.
um, and I feel that, you know, even in very well told stories, even that aren't explicitly Christian, if the whole story, even in which a beloved character dies, is hinting at Christ, then
Hmm.
there's a consolation even for the deaths
Yes.
of fictional characters.
Yes.
So I wouldn't say now that it's my goal to write a a book where no one dies, because
Mm,
then that book wouldn't be true. In our fallen
yeah.
world, people do die.
Right. Right.
But that was what got me started.
Wow. So has that desire just been with you ever since a child to write, or was that something that, showed up when you were a child and then kind of went away and then came back, or how did that work for you?
That's a great question. I I love telling stories as a
Hmm.
kid, and I would tell stories to my siblings and to my friends, in kind of a formal way. They would sit down and I would stand up and tell stories that I had read. I loved that. I still love oral storytelling,
Yeah.
and but to the actual writing part, and indeed the writing of A Year in the Company of Angels, really came back to a necessity again of wanting to really express something that was like
Yeah.
bubbling up in my heart.
Hmm.
I've read a lot of really awesome books on writing, and one of the consistent themes is don't wait for inspiration. Sit down, focus, and do your best every day. And some days inspirations will be there, some days they won't. And that's great
Wow.
advice.
Yeah, that
But
is great advice.
when I was on the islands, on St. Nelis Island and, of course, Spruce Island, where I lived, there were times when it was so wonderful. I mean, the essays are mainly presented, and the stories are mainly presented in chronological order that I wrote them in.
Hmm.
So, that first story, Enter the Castle, I was staying in the monks' skid cabin in Monk's Lagoon, and it was just so beautiful. It just, my heart was so full. I was like, this place is bursting with
Wow.
loveliness.
Yeah.
I had to do something. I had to write something,
Yeah.
and that's where the really, like, the first three essays, um, especially the first two, I was just from a feeling of almost elation and delight.
Wow.
And I had to do something with that feeling. I had to,
Right.
I couldn't just take it in.
You
I
had to
had to
direct
offer
it
something
somewhere.
back.
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Wow, that's beautiful. Wow. So that's kind of where the inspiration for this book came from, is just the overflowing delight that you had
Exactly.
on your trip there. That's
And
amazing. So
and
is
it isn't
this
just me. I've noticed that, like, other pilgrims who visit Spruce Island and St. Neolis, like, they're so touched. When we see something beautiful, we want to participate in it
yes,
somehow. We want to
yes.
give something back to it. And so pilgrims all the time, because I stayed there, for so long, I would see this pattern of pilgrims leaving things behind.
Hmm.
So whether it was just their gear, they wanted the monks to have another set of rainproof gear or waterproof boots,
Hmm.
or something creative. Like, this one pilgrim, she left this beautiful watercolor of sockeye salmon, and
Wow.
and that sockeye, the fathers liked it. It's a beautiful watercolor, and so it's kind of in a corner of one of the windowsills. And I
Wow.
was so jealous. I was like, oh, she made something so beautiful. I got to stay. It
Yes.
made the
Yes.
mark. It wasn't you know consigned to an attic somewhere.
Right. Right.
And so, kind of in the back of my head as I'm writing, is I was like, gosh, I want to do something that can survive staying in that monastery after I'm
Yes.
gone. Something that, won't get, not thrown away, but that fits the frequency of the island to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. That's great. So, is this your first book then?
It's the first book that is been accepted by a publishing house.
Fantastic.
But I've written other things,
Yeah.
some of which I'm proud of, some of which, are best consigned to oblivion. But this one is the first.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, aren't we so blessed that we were able to pick it up? I mean, I'm so excited. This is going to be great.
Well, thank
Um,
you, Melanie. I'm really grateful to Ancient
yeah.
Faith, and it's been a dream come true. This
Yeah.
year I've been so blessed. As I mentioned earlier, I got married, and
Yeah.
I have this book coming out. And
Yeah.
so thank God,
So many
God is
blessings.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's just start from the beginning then. Why did you go to Spruce Island? Like how did this whole thing start for you? Did you expect this to be a year-long pilgrimage? Did you expect it to just be a couple weeks and you stayed? Or what's the background here?
Yeah, yeah. Happy to tell you because it was totally unexpected.
Wow.
I was walking, um, I think it was the end of a service at the chapel at Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology. And I was just visiting because I graduated at that point.
Hmm.
But I had seen one of my friends. Um, Her name is Georgia. She's a fantastic person. And she knew that I was interested in pilgrimage. And I was thinking of going to Greece for a pilgrimage
Mm.
that summer for, just a little renewal at the end of the school year because I was teaching English language arts at the time. And she was like, well, why don't you go to Alaska? And she told me about this beautiful monastery. And she told me about one of the fathers who was living there in that Kodiak archipelago. And she really recommended that I get to know this father. And I was intrigued. I was looking for something new.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so, my beloved mentor, Dr. Timothy Patitsis, had the contact information for Father Andrew, who is the igumen or the Father Superior of St. Michael's Skeet. And he said, he put me in contact with Father Andrew, and Father Andrew blessed me to come visit for 9 days. And that was all that was supposed to happen. So I went over there with like one backpack full of stuff, ready to stay for 9 days. And as as I go into detail in the book, I just fell in love with the island. It was unlike any other place that I'd ever been before. And I've traveled to beautiful places. Thank God. I grew up in a beautiful country of
Right.
Albania,
Right.
in the heart of the Balkans there with the Adriatic. And
Yeah.
I've had the blessing to travel to Mount Athos and to
Wow.
travel to magnificent places. But the beauty of Spruce Island had, and I'm sort of paraphrasing something that Tolkien says
Mm.
when he's describing, I think he's describing the beauty of Goldberry, the
Mm.
wife of Tom Bombadil. He said that she had this great, magnificent beauty, but unlike an elven beauty, which was also like high and far away and unattainable,
Hmm.
her beauty was close to home.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
was like a homey beauty, one that was familiar, that sort of feeling you get when you have like a really wonderful memory of childhood,
Yeah.
or you smell like a certain smell in your parents' house, and you're like, oh my gosh, this takes me back to
Yeah.
home. And so it was that meeting of the magnificent beauty and the intimate childhood beauty feeling,
Wow.
that was just like, oh my gosh, like something has to happen here. Like I
Yeah.
can't just stay here 9 days and go, you know. I like teaching in Boston, but this was on a whole nother level. Like this was striking a chord that of a sonnet or of a symphony that I'd
Hmm.
been longing to listen to my whole life. So
I
I
love
had
it.
to had to try to stay. And so at first, we just extended it for a month, and Father Andrew blessed that. And after that, it didn't go away. It felt like I I needed to stay longer.
Wow.
And so, with the blessing of my spiritual father, and is something really providential that didn't make the final cut of the book, but I think is still significant.
Hmm.
I felt really bad for my English department at the little high school that I was teaching at
Oh yeah.
because, I was thinking about resigning and my position, a few weeks before the year started. And, they had some floaters and subs, but, that really stinks for, the department of people I really respected.
Right.
And, but this was priority to me. And so I called the principal, and I spoke also to one of the kind of major executives in the school. And, I just apologized and tried to explain the situation. And the principal was super gracious.
Wow.
Um, he was also a man of faith. He's like, I didn't know that. He was like, I'm a man of faith. And,
Wow.
if I understand that sometimes there's like a higher call and you got to go for it. So I was like, wow, thank you.
Yeah.
And then this other official in the school, he said, well, don't feel too bad, because through some sort of clerical mix-up, we actually hired one too many English teachers for this coming year. And we have an English teacher who really we didn't have any classes for. So she could just step right into your role.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was floored. Because we never overhire. We're always understaffed. It's a charter school, so it's always a mess.
That
And the
is
fact
so
that somehow
providential.
they had an extra teacher, and it just gave me like a lot of peace, because that was my biggest hang up. Was I felt bad for leaving, my school in a
Right.
lurch, and here God had provided for that.
Amazing.
So I was just like, I felt like it was all systems go, and that I could just stay as long as I wanted.
That is amazing. How providential is that? Wow. Wow. So, like, the rational part of my brain is like, I wanting to ask you this. So, if you only packed like one suitcase, how did you make do with that for a whole year?
That's so funny. Yeah, great question. Because the monks there, as I mentioned, they get so many gifts from people, and
Hmm.
so they have like a stockpile of, as one person I know described it, monastic core clothing. So like black sweatpants and black shirts and like
Stop.
socks and coats. And so when it was decided that I was going to stay, one of the fathers went up into the attic and took down this giant sack full of like basically brand new black clothes. And
Wow.
I just sort of dug through there
Yeah.
and found everything that I needed.
Yeah.
And I was set. I ordered a few things, but it was very smooth transition. And that was part of the thing. Alaska and especially Spruce Island are so off the grid.
Right.
You don't actually need a ton of stuff, and
Okay.
that was part of the revelation of the experience. Like for most of the time, I didn't carry my smartphone around with me, because I didn't want it. That's like the one place where you can be off the grid in a very
Yep.
real way.
Yep. Totally.
And so it was humbling, as somebody who's always lived in cities, to be like, wow, you don't need much more than a backpack of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Because that for sure. I mean, that would be tough to pack for something like that. I mean, I feel like if I were going to a year-long pilgrimage, I would be tempted to pack like a whole U-Haul. So it's
Well,
so impressive.
it's also funny because in my current move, I realized that the main thing that I schlep around are all my books.
Yes.
And so, that was a blow, not to have, like, I always carry like even like 20 books that are like essential to my life. Like just
Right.
knowing that they're in the room with me.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in this room now,
Yeah.
like they have to be there. And so not being with those books
Yeah.
was difficult, but the monks have a fantastic library.
Yeah.
It's not big, but this curious thing happened. And again, it didn't make the book just because it didn't quite fit. It was sort of it didn't fit because it was almost like a framing device.
Yeah.
And you'll understand what I mean when I say it's like whenever I needed a book, it it almost like appeared in the library.
Huh.
Like there was one time I wanted to read The Wind in the Willows. And but I had been through the library a bunch of times. I was like, I don't think they have it. But then there on the shelf, a shelf that I had perused a bunch of times, was this beautiful copy of The Wind and the Willows. I was like, oh,
Wow.
it's here. And then another time, one of the dear brothers and I were talking about St. Dionysius the Areopagite. And I was like, wow, I really wish I had his works here to like at least, take a peek at the heavenly hierarchies, which is one of his texts. And I'd never seen it. It's a tiny library, and I'd never seen it. But lo and behold, like it was just sitting there on one of the shelves.
Amazing.
And so the monks, like it's this tiny room, it's this tiny library, but it's so rich.
Mm.
And that was one of the other things that helped me have peace about staying, was
Yeah.
that there were all like virtually like all the books that I could need
Yeah.
were right there in that room.
That's awesome. Wow. How cool is that? So, I mean, okay, so then besides reading and going through the sack of clothing, what did you do for a full year there?
So definitely all the stuff that's mentioned in the book,
Yep.
primarily, in the summertime, lots of fishing expeditions.
Nice.
And, and of course, I'll say this as well. In the book, I really try to focus on the things that are easiest to translate to text.
Hmm.
And so activities like fishing or hiking or adventures, because the things that are harder to describe are the beautiful cycle of services and worship that the monks engage in every single day. Every day at 3 a.m., they're awake and
Wow.
they're, saying the prayers of matins, and they're chanting the holy offices and the hours. And that was a huge part of the life there. But how do you convey that in
Yeah.
writing? So the book is a kind of curious. It was a strange experience writing it, because there were, in some ways, I only shared the very, very, very lowest things
Hmm.
that happened on Spruce Island, because those were the things that I had the skill and the grace to describe.
Yeah.
Trying to describe, the prayer life of the monastery, some of the spiritual blessings that sweep through that place, you know were too special to put into words. Some of the fathers have been so blessed with many holy people who have come through the island or who they've met in their own pilgrimages, and they were generous with telling me about those experiences. But I have deliberately not included many of those things, not to keep them, not because I'm trying to be chintzy,
Hmm.
but because they were so special that if I wrote them down, not only would they not land, like they would fall flat in a literary sense, but it would be almost a betrayal
Yeah.
of that specialness. So now, don't think though that the things that are written then aren't wonderful. It's
Right.
just that I'm just trying to give the impression that the place was so
Yeah.
holy that
Yeah.
even writing about the monks' cats, was all the meaning and all the beauty that I could, barely carry off writing, in a literary sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. And I do think that there is something to be said for something being so moving and beautiful and holy, like you said, that you don't even try to put into words because you know it's going to fall flat. It's not going to do it justice, and it's it's just going to sour your experience because it's not the experience that's wrong. It's just our inability to communicate that. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You hit on it perfectly.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Wow. So of the parts that you talk about in your book, then, what would be your favorite part of the pilgrimage that you can describe?
There they're like 13 stories of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'd have to say that that day in the third chapter, when I got to most of the almost all the pilgrims had gone home. It was just starting to get fall, and everything
Mm.
was quieting down. The last of the fishing was happening, and there was just this magnificent, beautiful catch of fish.
Hmm.
And whenever there's a huge catch of fish, um, especially if it happens later in the day, sometimes the fathers don't have a chance to clean all the fish, to process them and fillet them. And so, because it's so cold by that time of year, they could just leave them outside and then process them the next day.
Oh, nice.
Sometimes with the help of the nuns on St. Nelis. And so after this wonderful catch, it was too late to process them, so we all went to bed. But the next day, we went over to the nuns' island to process them, and that was just one of the most glorious days because it had like the energy of summer. The sun was shining, we were all in high spirits, but the pilgrims had gone home, and the leaves on the few trees that changed leaves in the Kodiak archipelago were
Yeah.
starting to burn, and
Mm.
that kind of magical autumn feeling as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And for me, that feeling is always, you know, always seems to hint that just around the next river bend, something marvelous is waiting.
Yeah.
And you know, we uh, we all the monks and all the nuns just started cleaning fish together. And I felt so special because I was the only non-monastic there.
Hmm.
And I just felt so a part of the daily liturgy of their lives. And yeah, I was like the lowest. I was a layperson, and they were all people who had dedicated themselves to drawing closer to God in every possible aspect of their lives.
Yeah.
And yet, we were elbow to elbow,
Right.
doing this really messy thing,
Yeah.
and there was laughter, and and it was just such a happy, happy day.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, are the fish that they catch, is this all salmon?
So the two big ones are salmon and halibut, huge halibut. And they're very different fish. Like the salmon, is that very rich, dense, protein-rich fish, but the halibut is like this very light white fish. It's
Hmm.
almost fluffy,
Huh.
um, and they're huge fish. Like I think the biggest that we caught while I was there was just like 50 pounds or something, but the record for the monks is like 200 pounds.
What?
Yeah. They get like leviathan fish.
That's wild.
Yeah, and they're bottom feeders, or I don't. They're not quite bottom feeders, but they feed close to the bottom.
Yeah.
Um, and so the hooks soak at the bottom of the sea, and so when you're pulling up the line, you drop all these little hooks on a line down to a few feet, and then you leave it there to soak for like 6 hours,
Okay.
and then you come back and you pull up that line, and sometimes all you catch are a bunch of starfish, but other times you see like from the like indigo waters this huge form, and it's like your heart just starts to beat so much faster because there's this beast
Something's
surfacing,
coming.
and it's just like, and then you have to use something called a gaff hook because the little hook that it's got in its cheek isn't strong enough to lift the whole weight of the fish out of the water.
Sure.
It would
Yeah.
tear. So you have to use the giant metal hook
Yep.
to tag it under its gills and then schlep it. Sometimes it takes two guys with two hooks pulling this giant fish into the boat, and then it's flopping all around, and it's like a glorious little experience of wrestling with the chaos of the deep. And then that one halibut can provide food for like that's like a month's worth of halibut or something.
That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah, so
So
like
it doesn't go to waste.
No, no, the fathers are so careful, and they have, um, it's interesting. Like they try not to use a little technology as possible, but the
Yeah.
technology that they do use, they use well and efficiently.
Yeah.
So they have these like they're almost like these laminated like Ziploc bags. So they have a machine that will that's not a good way. I didn't describe them well. It sucks all the air out of the
Oh, yeah,
bag,
yeah.
vacuum seals them. That's
Yeah.
what I'm looking
Yeah.
in these really in these kind of like laminate plastics, and then those are put in the freezer, and the plastic prevents it from going bad and getting
Right.
freezer burn. So really everything but like the parasite-ridden stomach of the halibut and
Yeah.
some parts of the head, you know,
Wow.
are used.
That's amazing. And I bet, I mean, a fresh fish like that or the salmon, I mean, I bet that was just amazing to have.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't eat salmon when I got back to lower 48 for like almost a year and a half
Really?
because the salmon down here is so bad. It's so anemic.
Really? So there's a big difference?
Yes, even like at a restaurant like Seasons 52, where you
Yeah.
pay like $30 for like a little like cedar plank salmon thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's compared to the salmon of Alaska that's freshly caught. Uh, this salmon, our salmon is paler color.
Hmm.
It's fattier. It's more limp. It doesn't crumble as well, as opposed to Alaskan salmon, which is this bright red color,
Hmm.
super dense, super fresh tasting, holds this glorious, beautiful shape, and you really feel like, oh my gosh, not only does this taste amazing, but like I know that this was a real creature. This
Yes.
wasn't just, some kind of, farm raised thing that I never
Right.
even,
Super
I didn't
far
even pick.
removed. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Wow. Well, that almost gives you more of a reverence to creation, right? And to God who created creation, who's providing this for you, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Because the monks pray before every catch. It was funny. There was one time, one of the fathers and I were uh, sort of like the lowest tier fish that you can get is called rockfish,
Okay.
and there were these really they're like a little dinosaur fish, and they don't taste amazing. I think they're tasty, but by like Alaskan standards,
Yeah.
they're like the poor man's fish if you can't get anything else. And so sometimes when it was like a weekend, but it wasn't a big feast day to bust out halibut or salmon, we would just, and because it was just such a treat to go fishing with a pole, we would jig for rockfish.
Hmm.
And one time, one of the fathers and I were out there, and we knew that there were a ton of rockfish there, but we were having no success. No success. And then the chaplain of the nuns rode by in his kayak, and we asked him to like bless our fishing. And we realized that we hadn't done our initial prayer before,
Hmm.
throwing our hooks in. We were excited, we just
Yeah.
immediately started throwing our lures, in the water. And, we hadn't caught anything for like half an hour, and then right after we met um, Father Ephraim, who was the chaplain of the nuns, um, we and we spoke to him and we said our prayer. We started catching rockfish. Like a lot, like as much as we needed for dinner that night.
Wow.
And it was so simple. It was so beautiful.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's not complicated.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're right. You said it perfectly. You realize that, it's all from God. Even the fish. I don't want to, hate on our fish, here in the lower 48. Even that fish, is a
Right.
blessing,
Yeah.
and came from a fish, that God created, even if it was farmed,
Right. Right.
but
Yeah. It's
still,
still given life.
Christ condescends to feed us, even in our, very broken, systems that we have of
Yeah.
food. The food that we
Yes.
get in the supermarket is still a blessing.
Yes. Absolutely. Wow. How inspiring. I love that story. Wow. So, you know, from your experience there over the year that you were on pilgrimage, um, as someone who's never gone on a pilgrimage to Alaska, and I'm sure many of the readers of your book also will not have gone on a pilgrimage to Alaska. What do you think that these monastics in Alaska, what do you think that those monastics can teach us, especially those of us who live in the lower 48?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'll try to keep it specific to what's special about their vocation being in Alaska.
Yes.
Um, I they they're so generous with sharing the labor. Some of the fathers there have been there for over 25 years. They are expert fishermen. They are experts at cutting wood. Oh, you should see how they split logs. It's beautiful. But they know that many of us, haven't, spent a summer splitting wood, and, letting it be cured for the winter,
Hmm.
letting it be seasoned by the wind. But they are so generous in that they're like, here, try. Not
Hmm.
just try, but spend hours doing it. You know, Instead of just doing it themselves, they let all the pilgrims try to pull in that net, hook that halibut with the gaff hook. And because they know that we are so disconnected from our bodies here,
Hmm.
that because everything is provided to us, we don't have that relationship with the created world. We don't
Right.
have that respect for the fish
Right.
or that reverence for the trees. We don't know, we haven't seen the rings, smelled the fragrance, of the pine as we split it. And so they, give their pilgrims that gift of letting them experience God's creation and rejoicing in it. And bottom of that generosity is a profound appreciation of the incarnation,
Hmm.
of Christ sanctifying not just his body, the church, but all of creation through his coming here.
Yes.
Um, and so I think that's one of the special gifts that the Alaskan monastics have to teach us, you
Hmm.
know, is that reverence for the created world.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And that is definitely something that most of us, like you said, here in America, definitely need to know because we are the products of the Industrial Revolution and the industry that goes on every day of our lives, and we are so far removed from the land. Um, yeah, that is just a fantastic reminder. I mean, there are days that I don't even go outside, you
Yeah.
know? That's terrible.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's it's gentle too in the sense that like when you go there, you're like, oh, I want to live subsistence. I want to be a homesteader somewhere.
Right.
And by God's grace, I'm sure some of those pilgrims will.
Hmm.
But you know, it's also any contact
Hmm.
with the created world
Yeah.
blesses us. Even if that's just gardening, even
Right.
if that's just going for a walk around our neighborhood.
Yeah.
The point is that each part of those places is a jumping off point
Hmm.
for um, for a prayer, for a connection with God.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And how perfect that your book is going to be coming out now in the fall, right? Where this is all changing and we're seeing this glorious beauty of nature all around us. That's just amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
thank God. The timing is really great.
Yes, this is
Um,
perfect.
I'm really excited to
Yeah.
present it, not just to all the people, who I love, who, knew about my pilgrimage, but also to your readers.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. I mean, like we're so excited to share your story and your pilgrimage. So I think this is going to be amazing. Um, So the last question I'll ask you then will be what, and it's kind of just like tangentially related, what is the number one thing then that you're hoping readers of your book get from all this?
I'm hoping that it allows them, gives them the courage or the inspiration to, when they feel the tugging of something wonderful, of something beautiful, of a beauty that God designed just for them.
Hmm.
Anybody could see that that beautiful thing was wonderful. But we each have encounters where they're like, oh, that's beauty for me. That was designed for me. That was my experience being on Spruce Island. And that's what caused me to go on this adventure that changed my life, that's still changing my life.
Mm-hmm.
And my hope is that everybody, when they read this book and they feel that feeling in themselves, when they encounter that specific beauty, maybe it'll be in Alaska, but who knows? It could come from anywhere at any
Yeah.
moment. I certainly wasn't expecting to stay, longer than 9 days, or than 30 days. But it could come as a surprise. And
Yeah.
so when that thing comes, to trust it, to trust that God isn't just goodness and truth, He's also beauty.
Yeah.
And trusting in the beautiful in your own life is trusting in God.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like sometimes those experiences of beauty that God designs just for you, sometimes they are as enormous as a year-long pilgrimage in Alaska, and sometimes they are just the little specks throughout your life where you look out and you say, wow, that is a beautiful piece of farmland out there. That is a beautiful leaf that has just changed, is gorgeous red as the weather is changing. It's God is working in all those different ways. And so being able to recognize his beauty when we see it all around us, whether big or small, it sounds like this is one thing that you're really hoping that people are able to receive from your book.
I couldn't have said it better, Melanie, because the Lord condescends
Mhm.
to us in those small things.
Yeah.
We can encounter all of Him,
Right.
or as much as we can bear of His uncreated grace in that piece of farmland. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It doesn't have to be something really dramatic, because the Lord condescends even through the smallest thing, to an encounter with a person. And when you encounter with a person, you don't encounter part of that person. You're not like,
Right.
oh, I'm talking to 20% of Christ.
Right.
You encounter all of Him.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. And then, during the liturgies on Sunday mornings, we're encountering him through the Eucharist too.
Amen. Oh yes. Then we're encountering Him, you know, in the flesh.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. Well, thank you, Anthony. This has been just fantastic. I am so excited for this book to release. I'm so excited for our readers to be able to experience it. And talking to you today has just been a real blessing for me. Thank you.
It is likewise. Thank you for spending the time with me, and I'm excited as well, and glad to be on the journey with you.
Great. Well, we are very excited about the release, and I know it's just going to be a blessing for all who receive it. So thank you so much for your time today, and we're just very excited. Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a great evening.